Hey, how you doing? It's Des Clark here, and I have been part of many a Hit Scotland event over the past few years, and I know as you do what a tough year or so it's been for everyone involved in the hospitality industry. That's why the Recipe for Recovery webinars have been such a success, and may I use the pun hit for many people? There you go, I've still got it, and I hope you enjoy this one as a way to bounce back, to recover, to go forward, and at some point soon get to this new normal that we keep talking about. Enjoy the webinar.
Scotland Recipe for Recovery webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jennifer Riach, and I'm delighted to be back here once again this week for the next hour, which promises to be full of inspiration and fantastic knowledge as well. Now, you might have guessed we've already done two before. This is the third in the series. If you have missed either of them, they are on the Hit Scotland website, and you can check them out as well on our Instagram as well, I think. So have a wee look for them at some point later on and prepare yourself for the next hour, because we're going international today. Yeah, we are adding a whole lot of action-packed hour ahead of you. We're going to get people to share their perspectives on the best way for us all to recover as we work our way back to what has been, well, it's been challenging. It's been frankly a wee bit rubbish, let's be honest, over the last year. But the end is hopefully in sight, light at the end of that tunnel, and we're working forward to something much more positive in the coming months. Now, that is exactly why these Hit Scotland webinars are here. They are free and they are for everyone across the industry. Hit Scotland's all about that. They're inspiring, they're supporting, and they're providing training opportunities as well for everything throughout the hospitality industry, from the chefs to the suppliers, tourism, tech businesses, outdoor activity centres. Basically, they try and do the best for everyone to help encourage us all to keep improving and just working on what already is a wonderful industry in this country, which is why we're here live in the Hilton in Glasgow. And to formally introduce us to today's Hit session, we've got Hit Scotland's Chief Executive, now with an MBE, got that in 2020, like to bring that one up again, because it just shows off his services to hospitality, his passion, and how hard he does really work. It is the lovely David Cochrane.
Thanks very much, and it's, as you say, a pleasure to be here in the fine surroundings of the Hilton Glasgow. These walls really are superb, surrounding the event last week and again this week. As you say, we've got to the third out of the 6 webinars. It's great that the numbers keep going up each week, people tuning in. And huge thanks to Paul Gray and the committee who actually put the things together. And today is all about recovery, and as you said, it's a real international flavour to it. Delighted to see Alicia,
who was one of our previous scholars many years ago, I think 2012. She's now in Thailand. We've got Whit from China, we've got Kate, who's from London, and we've got Cameron here in the studio with us, who you'll hear more about later on. So it's fantastic that we're able to put these webinars on. Great to see so many different variety of speakers as well. And it's great to see Des Clark as well at the start. So good, Tom Kerridge was there, but Des Clark too. So thanks for that, Jennifer.
Yeah, Tom and Des making a novelty appearance.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Whole new show.
Thank you, David. And of course, thank you to the fantastic committee for putting this all together. We've got an exciting hour ahead. Actually, we need to thank our sponsors though before we go any further, because without them, it just wouldn't be possible to do these webinars. So thank you so much to Skills Development Scotland, Vision Events Glasgow, Red Unit, Recruit Genie, and the Hilton Hotels. Thank you to each and every one of them. Now, as I mentioned before, the webinars are free, as you know, and they continue to be free over the next few weeks, which is really important because we want everyone to be able to access them. If you do want to support Hit Scotland though, and you're able, there is no pressure at all, you can text to donate £10. What you do is text HIT SCOT, that's HITSCOT, to 785. Details are on the screen now below me. I always try and do this and it's like a hovering finger. Excellent. They are there. If you can and you would like to, then please feel free to donate that £10 to Hit Scotland, because all the money raised will go to our resilience scholarships to help those adversely affected by the pandemic, which is obviously very important indeed. Right, as I keep promising you, an action-packed hour. So we're shortly going to be hearing from Kate Nicholls, the CEO of UKHospitalities. We've got Wang as well, the Assistant Director of Rooms at Suzhou Hotel, Jiangsu, China. Apologies for any dodgy pronunciation there. And Coutts has delightfully joined us in the studio, as David said as well. He's the strategic partner at Red Unit. But we're going to power on because we do only have an hour ahead of us. So first up, we are delighted that joining us from the Six Senses Yao Noi in Thailand is Alicia Denning. Now, Alicia is the resort manager there, and she began her journey into hospitality with a traineeship at Starwood Hotels and Resorts. And it was here that she taught the foundations of exceptional service, found her passion for five-star hospitality, and her career really has enabled her to travel the world, taking in many wonderful locations, not just in her homeland of Australia, but also in Scotland, in Germany, and, as you might have guessed, now in Thailand. Along this journey, she has received several personal accolades, such as the Olive Barnett Award, a prestigious Hit Scotland Scholarship, which David mentioned, and a renowned UK Caterer and Hotel Keeper Acorn Award. And we are delighted that she joins us now live from Thailand. Welcome, Alicia Denning. How are you doing, Alicia?
Sawadika, I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I like that. Sawadika, is that right?
Sawadika, that's correct. Sawadika.
Well, thank you so much. It's all yours. Take it away.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you for inviting me to be part of the Hit Scotland webinars. I'm excited to tell you about what we've been doing to our road to recovery here at Six Senses. So I will ask for my slides to be put up on the screen if I can, and I'll go through what we've done within Six Senses. So just obviously, Jennifer, you've just explained a little bit about myself, but allow me to give a little bit more information. So over 23 years of experience within the hospitality industry, within five-star hotels. I've certainly found my calling all those many years ago when I started. Currently working at Six Senses and have been here for almost 2 years and absolutely loving working with Six Senses. And prior to that, working in hotels and resorts such as Hayman Island and the Great Barrier Reef, the wonderful Sheraton Grand in Edinburgh, and also Palazzo Versace on the Gold Coast. So I'd love to just move on now and talk to you a little bit about where I am, just so you can familiarise yourself and as I talk through today. So as I said, I'm at Six Senses Yao Noi, and this here is one of the beautiful villas that we have, our beautiful one-bedroom villa that we have that our guests come and stay in. And I wanted to give you a little bit more information about the actual property itself. So if we can move on to the next screen. So, the first thing is where we are located is we're about 45 minutes speedboat away from Phuket. So if anybody was wanting to visit us, they would travel into Phuket or indeed Krabi airports. We have hosts, etc., that meet our guests there, and then we place them in a vehicle to the marinas, and then they can come on one of our beautiful speedboats over to the island. So there's quite a lot of touch points for our guests, and also within our hosts, which is what we call for our staff. At Six Senses, we call them our hosts. So if we could just flip to the next screen. So who are we? So we are a 31-acre property in the lush tropical island of Koh Yao Noi. We have 56 villas that are all sustainable. Six Senses is very much a sustainable company. We have over 225 hosts that work for us. Majority of them are from the local island and the surrounding islands. When we are pre-COVID, we have 5 dining operations, an amazing wellness spa facilities, organic gardens, farms, and sustainability labs. So that gives you a bit of an idea as I talk today about our road to recovery, and you have a bit of an understanding about what we have done as a company to try and get back on track. So we'll move on to the next slide, which is about how Thailand has reacted to the COVID pandemic. So one of the things that's extremely commendable within the Thai government is that they immediately actioned provincial lockdowns within the areas. So there are many provinces to Thailand, and especially around where we are in the Phang Nga region. So instantly there were lockdowns. So people were not allowed to travel anywhere, even across from Phuket over to Phang Nga where we are. Guests had to try and figure out how to get to and from the islands prior to the lockdown. So that was quite challenging at the time. Compulsory mask wearing. Here in Southeast Asia, it is quite common for us all to wear masks anyway. It's certainly something that we are used to, and so you walk around and everybody has a mask on, and it is something that we continually do on a daily basis. The full lockdown of bars and clubs and sporting arenas, etc., happened very quick at the start, and also they had curfews. So, for example, here on the island, it was 9 p.m. We all had to be in bed, tucked up, and weren't allowed to go outside. The government called force majeure as well for all of us hotels. So we were instructed to close, and which I will sort of touch on a little bit later on, but we were forced to close the property. The government also introduced a social security scheme for all of the Thai nationals, which was fantastic. I think at the time it took a lot of pressure off all of the Thai community that the government were certainly able to help and support them during this time. So I believe all of these things that have been mentioned is one of the contributing factors, or all of the contributing factors, as to why the numbers, and obviously fluctuates, but over 28,889 cases with sadly 95 fatalities. So I feel that Thailand has completely reacted extremely fast and have been very proactive and reactive as soon as the COVID pandemic started. So I wanted to go on now and talk to you a little bit about how COVID affected our business. So approximately 30% of Thailand's economy is reliant on international travel. So when all the airports, etc., closed down, this really crippled us as a country, and certainly the smaller islands like the one that I'm on now. As I mentioned before, the government called a force majeure, which means that we had to close our doors, and it was on April 4th. We closed our doors and reopened on April 24th. So during the closure, what was in the forefront of our mind as Six Senses, but indeed Six Senses as a global brand, was to look after our communities, look after our hosts, invest in our hosts and our assets, and also to stay motivated and keep moving through this pandemic together as one team. So a few of the things that we had to change within our business, and things that organically sort of happened throughout the closure, was we used to have 310 hosts that would work alongside us for our 56 villas. And we've now gone down to our host count of 225. Now, a lot of that reduction in host count has actually been due to a lot of the hosts are wanting to return back to be close to their families. So I understand a lot of businesses have made redundancies, etc., and we've certainly had to do that. But quite a lot of the movement that we have experienced has been actually by personal choice to remain back with family and friends. Throughout this time, we chose to restructure and multi-skill quite a lot of our hosts. So when we were able to sort of take a step back and look at our business and decide how we could restructure and also enhance the skills of the hosts that we did have, and so we were able to do that. When the government introduced the social security, as I mentioned before, this was amazing for our hosts because it allowed them to take time off to be with their families as well and not feel that they had to work. We also had introduced the Leave Without Pay program, but also salary reductions. And to this day, we continue to do that. And that has worked really, really well for us. And also our hosts have been extremely understanding that we as a business have been able to make those decisions. With the effect on our business, one of the things that we learned pretty quick was that we would have to change our business model. And without any international travel, as I said earlier on, 30% of Thailand's economy is reliant on our overseas travellers. We really needed to look at refocusing who we were going to market on. And the way that we obviously redirected was to our local domestic market, which was usually in previous years only 3% of our market mix. So we had to really make changes and become very strategic in what we were going to do to try and make sure that our Thai guests came and visited us. Keeping in mind that as we opened, all of the other hotels around Phuket and Krabi and Phang Nga, our region, were all opening at the same time. So it was a very tough market to try and capture. So if we could just move on to the next one that I wanted to talk to you about is how we prepared for the business for the guest recovery. So we decided, as we studied our business model, and this is not for everybody, and it is certainly something that needs to be, discussed from all levels. But we opened with a reduced inventory. So this was allowing us to first and foremost control the safe opening of the resort for our hosts, for our guests, and importantly on the island. So we only ended up opening, instead of the 56 villas, we opened up 25, and we fluctuated between we started off with 15 and we went up to 25, which is where we sort of base at now, and we can fluctuate up to 30. So this has been fantastic for us because it's allowed us to ensure our expense management is managed. And with that, I mean, obviously turning on all of the facilities in the villas and air conditioning and pools and so on and so forth. We obviously maintain them, but it certainly helps with the expense management when you do open in a soft opening just gradually. And as we continue to grow, we open more and more rooms when we can. Continuous communication with our guests prior to arrival is one of the things that we pride ourselves on as well. So when the guests are coming from our local market, making sure that they're seeing that we value that they're making the effort to come and visit us. We're assuring them that what we're doing is going to protect them and make sure that their safety is first and foremost. We've obviously done what every hotel, I'm sure, is doing and has done, and sanitizers and masks are now being offered within the guest villas, and they are encouraged to use and wear them. And so that has been a really, really great addition for the guests. They really love that. We, at the same time as COVID happened, Six Senses as a brand, we're actually launching a brand new mobile app which would have all of the information about all of our properties, but indeed the particular property that our guests were staying in. So having this app launched at the same time was actually fantastic because that meant that we could remove quite a lot of the collateral. So we removed all the excess collateral that we didn't need. Further to that, we did one of the big things that we loved was calling our guests, our loyal guests that weren't able to come and stay with us. So we would call our guests that were from our Europe market or the UK, etc., and make sure that they were okay and connect with them. So whilst they couldn't come and stay with us, we were still making sure that we were in their hearts and they knew that they were in our hearts. Okay. And then the last one that we had was engaging in social media. Storytelling, keeping it alive with our guests and making sure that they know that we're still here and we're having fun and this beautiful, beautiful island is there for them when they wish to come back and visit. So now I'd like to talk to you just quickly about how do we prepare for recovery for our hosts. So the biggest thing that we learned was you don't know what your hosts are dealing with when they're at home. So when they come to work, it's a bit of an escape for them. They've got many struggles, I'm sure, at home, and it's good for them to come in and just have a bit of a release. So one of the things we chose to do was make sure we, as I mentioned earlier, was upskill them, cross-train them into departments. When they came back on board, we had jump start training for them, which meant they went through the whole onboarding process again. And the biggest thing that we implemented for them all was financial training. Financial training was key, and this is with our financial team that we have, because finances right now for everybody is a very, it's affecting everybody. So we wanted to make sure that our hosts had all the information that they needed to help manage their finances during this time. Further to that, we also did things that were really important about motivation and keeping the team moving. So we held wellness classes, fitness classes, welfare checks, host appreciation, motivation activities. The biggest thing that was also fantastic for us was our general manager and myself and the remaining XCOM team. We had meetings the whole way through with our hosts. We were extremely transparent from start to finish on how we were going as a business, what our challenges were, what our celebrations were, and we just continued to keep them involved the whole way through. We didn't hide anything from them. Daily temperature checks have been conducted from the start and continue to do now, as well as travel records. So whenever our hosts do go off the island, we ask them to let us know where they are going and make sure that we can trace if need be. We supplied masks for our hosts as well and enforced social distancing amongst the community inside our island. And then also we had encouraged and enhanced our chefs within our host canteen where we cook for our hosts, and when they're eating, to have healthy, we already supply very healthy meals for our hosts, but we increase the protein and further to that, immune booster juices and things like that, to make sure that they were armed, ready to go when we opened, and they were all full of strength. So I'll just move on to talk to you all about now what we've learned and what the future holds. So one of the things that we've learnt is that the domestic market is the market that you need and the one that you'll rely on. And you need to make sure that you understand and assess what it is that domestic market is wanting when they travel. So we found that being fluid with our offerings and continually evolving and changing, making sure that our experiences for our guests were what they were after when they came on holiday. And I'll just give you an example quickly for things like menus, from what we would normally have in a menu to a restaurant, which is very much for international travel. Now we have domestic travel. They're wanting that really traditional local Southern Thai food. Or an international traveller would love to go out on a boat for 6 hours in the beautiful bay, but the Thai domestic market prefer to have 2 hours rather than being out there for 6. So what we've learned is to make sure that you're very fluid and you're able to adapt and change. What the future holds for us is an amazing international market that are really, really ready to travel. There's a huge pent-up demand for everybody to come and travel. The biggest thing that we feel that the future holds for us is that we're going to need to be ready to pivot, and we're going to need to go back to those requirements for the guests of international travel, but also keeping that aspect for our domestic market. And just lastly, if I can talk to you a little bit about the takeaways and to help with a successful recovery. One of the things that I've personally learned during this period is that you need to look after yourself and your own well-being before you can go and look after others. And I think that as a senior leader within a property, or even frontline hosts, or wherever you may be within the resort or property, you need to make sure that you look after your emotional, your physical, and your social well-being. And don't feel that you have to hang out or do it all alone. And the reason why I say this, if you look at the photo there, there's me doing aerial yoga, which I've never ever experienced before in my life, but I did it. And the gentleman that I'm actually doing the aerial yoga with is a gentleman named Brian, who's from Six Senses head office. He's one of the vice presidents. And Brian came down to check up on us all, and had an amazing time with us, just celebrating and working with us and looking after us. And it really, really made an impact to the hosts. So I strongly, strongly advise that if you can get out there and really look after yourself, but also make sure you do it with the hosts that are working with you, then it really goes a long way. And then the last thing that I'd love to say is that the way to success is definitely in your people. The only way that we've got to where we are today and that we are doing so well in our concept is because we involved our hosts from the start. We've kept them going the whole way through, and then now they're helping us with making us return. So that would be my 2 takeaways for success and recovery. So if anybody has any questions or would like to connect with me in regards to anything I've mentioned today, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to help.
Well, thank you so much, Alicia. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you. You've actually inspired us here in Glasgow in the studio. As you can see, we now have a beach scene behind us.
Oh, yay!
We decided Thailand looked amazing. We're excited for international travel as well as domestic travel. And we thought, let's go to the beach. Do you approve, gents? Cameron, David?
Fantastic, yeah. Beach towel at the ready.
We're all ready for the beach.
Excellent. But I'll have the pina coladas ready.
Yes, that sounds absolutely perfect. Honestly, I love it. But I think that was a great takeaway there at the end. You can't really get anywhere without your people, and to look after each other is so important. So thank you very much. As Alicia said, she's going to hopefully hang around for a wee bit longer throughout the next few presentations, and we're going to do a Q&A at the end. So please do get involved. I have got a computer to the left of me here. I will be able to see your comments. I think Kirsty from Hit Scotland has already put in a wee message about the donations. We've had another message from Iris saying hello to Alicia, which is very nice as well. You too can get involved. Please don't be shy. Chuck any questions you have for Alicia or any of the speakers as we go forward in that wee box. If you put your sort of cursor, your mouse onto your web page, a chat box should come up. Click on that and get involved. We're going to move swiftly on though to our second speaker, and today it is Kate Nicholls, CEO at UKHospitality. She is the powerful voice representing the broad hospitality sector, having previously worked as CEO and Strategic Affairs Director of the ALMR. In January 2020, Kate joined the Mayor of London's London Food Board, advising the Mayor on food matters directly affecting London. Kate is also chair of the Tourism Alliance and the Mayor of London's Nighttime Commission. Kate serves as a member of the Events Industry Board, Tourism Industry Council, Cultural Cities Inquiry, London and Partners Member Group, Best Bar None Board, and is a trustee at Hospitality Action. I do not know how she does it all. Incredible. She has taken time out of what must be an exceptionally busy schedule to join us now. Thank you so much for coming, Kate. How are you doing?
Thank you very much for having me. Delighted to be able to join you.
We're delighted you're here. Thank you. So tell us a wee bit about what you do and your thoughts, obviously, on the recipe for recovery.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to particularly focus on the industry and the political landscape, where we are, what we're doing, and how we're going to look forward to recover. So I'm going to start by taking you back 14 months to where we were pre-pandemic, before anybody really realised what COVID was going to do. Tourism and hospitality in the UK was a £130 billion industry. The third largest export earner in the UK is tourism. And actually our overseas visitors spend more on eating and drinking out in our UK businesses than all of our food and drink exports put together. And that includes Scotch whisky, which is our largest export. We employed 3.2 million people. We were growing 5% year on year, and we were generating 1 in 6 of net new jobs. I'm going to start with all of that positive, because that is where I think we will end up when we come out of the recovery. And we were also contributing £40 billion worth of tax to the Exchequer, funding vital public services. So I want you to hold that in your mind, because where we are now is an industry absolutely devastated by COVID. Our industry is only just a third of the size that it was 14 months ago. We have lost £74 billion worth of revenue, £200 million a day in lost revenues over the course of the last 14 months, where most of our businesses have been closed for most of that time, or so severely restricted that they have not been able to trade profitably. And I think, you know, the key takeaway message from that for politicians that we've been taking to them in our regular meetings, both in Holyrood and in Westminster and the other devolved administrations, is that only for 2 weeks last year did our industry break even. So that big backdrop of the third biggest employer in the UK, a huge contributor to the Scottish economy in particular, and devastated by the pandemic, means that you need a clear plan of action to help this industry recover. We've lost 12,000 businesses, 12,000 premises throughout the course of the pandemic, contraction of 18%, nearly 1 in 5 of all of our restaurants, 9% of hotels, and 6% of pubs. So it is a whopping toll that COVID has taken from our businesses, and we will need support and long-term support to be able to recover from that. However, what we have done is set out for those governments and in Westminster a tourism recovery plan to get us back on track, to get us back as the engine of economic growth that we know we can be, and to support the recovery of our economies, our social and community life, as well as our own businesses. So the first part of that is a clear staged exit strategy with indicative dates linked to vaccine rollout and suppression of the disease, and a commitment from governments of all parts of the UK not to return to lockdown. There is no doubt that if we went back into lockdown, went back into restrictions, that our businesses would not survive, and that toll on businesses would be far higher. A phased easing of restrictions, not just to open, but to open in the right way and to allow us to open profitably. So that's all about the restrictions that are in place that prevent our businesses from breaking even, whether that's table service, whether that's seated only, whether that's no music and entertainment, whether that's restrictions on hours and the requirement to have food before you can have alcohol, which we've still got north of the border in Scotland. We need to make sure that we have a fixed date for ending all of those restrictions. Why does that matter? Because it gives businesses the confidence to be able to plan, and it gives consumers the confidence to make those bookings. And that is critical when we know that international tourism is not going to recover for any time soon. So to give you some of the good news about where we're getting, in light, this is particularly in England, but it bodes well for Scotland too. In light of that roadmap, where in England we've got dates, we've got indicative dates for all parts of the economy to open. We still need that in Scotland for larger events, for conferences, for banqueting, etc., and for mass sporting events. We are seeing confidence return. So business confidence across our operators, market optimism has risen on the back of the budget and the route map publication. The indicative dates have given that confidence. 2/3 of our businesses now are confident of surviving this crisis and remaining viable, but the break-even and viability point not returning until the sort of second quarter of next year. Still, however, for 25% of our businesses, and unfortunately there is a higher proportion of those in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, where we don't have those indicative dates and the clarity going forward, the break-even point and the fear of toppling over still remains. A quarter of our businesses still think that they are at risk of business failure in the second half of next year and even into the first half of 2022. So it's going to be a lengthy recovery. There's a high degree of fragility, and it's going to be a patchy recovery depending upon those who are dependent upon international travel and tourism. But for confidence domestically, we can see that coming back on the back of this. 1/3 of UK consumers now confident to book a trip for June and to know that that trip will go ahead. That is just 1/3, but it is getting better and it's improving week on week. 50% of consumers now feel that normality will return by the end of this year. 17% still pessimistic, think the worst is yet to come, but I think you'll always get a few that are glass half empty. Half of adults now anticipate taking more overnight domestic trips between reopening dates, whenever those are in their calendar, and the end of the year. 44% already booked a spring break, 19% summer break. So that uncertainty around international travel and tourism still coming through. And the most likely locations, again, the really good news for Scotland: coast, rural, self-catering, camping, just 23% planning a city break, which is a real challenge for London, Edinburgh, Glasgow, those city markets that are going to be decimated for some time to come when international travel doesn't return. Second part of our 3-point plan for the governments: help us rebuild our shattered balance sheets, tackle the level of indebtedness to allow hospitality to recover, to allow the economy to recover as quickly as we can. So that's about business rates holidays, that's about furlough, that's about additional grants. The longer we have closed or subject to severe restrictions, the longer we have to live with those restrictions, the more we will need to have. And also a proposal for a recapitalisation strategy. We've survived the black swan of COVID, but the grey rhinoceros of debt is going to run alongside all of our businesses for too much longer. And that's why you're not really seeing recovery coming through in the hospitality sector until 2022. They are going to have to spend all of their time repaying back that debt. And critically amongst that, we now need to see real solutions on rent that is hurting so many of our businesses, rent and mortgage payments. And then the final point is about making sure we've got the plans in place for future recovery. It's about root and branch reform of business rates. It's about reform of Landlord and Tenant Act. It's about planning, licensing, providing that supportive environment. And it's also about making sure that we have the results coming out of the Global Travel Task Force to give confidence for the return of our international visitors. And we need a joined up UK approach to that, whether that's the traffic light system for allowing people to come into the country, or whether it's about testing and COVID status certification. We need to find a way of unlocking those major events, and that Global Travel Task Force should be coming through with some of the answers around that. If we have all of those measures in place, then I'm confident that we can go back to that positive situation that I started with. 1 in 6 of net new jobs delivered in all parts of the UK, in the remote regions of Scotland, in those areas of high deprivation where there aren't any other major employers and where we are top 2 number of employers. And we can also provide that investment in our high streets that are suffering so much from the decline in retail, and we can continue to invest in our communities. Importantly, we can then play our part as providing a platform for cultural renewal, urban renewal in the heart of our major capitals. We can successfully be a showcase for the best of British, both in export terms and on the global stage, hosting the G7 in Cornwall, hosting COP26 in Glasgow, and then hosting the Commonwealth Games in Coventry and Birmingham next year. And on the back of that, we know that we can then take our part and play our part in the economic recovery across the UK. Thank you.
Roller coaster, we started so high, some of those figures were scary actually. We got to some scary figures in there, and hopefully though, I'm really loving your optimism. I think you're right, that confidence needs to keep building, and we will be looking forward to a much brighter future. Thank you so much. If you've got any questions for Kate, she's going to be able to hang around for a wee bit longer, so hopefully we'll get to that Q&A very shortly. As I've said before, in the comments box in the webinar, get involved, and we'll have that Q&A very shortly. We're going to move on though to our last speaker of today, and it's Wang. He is Assistant Director of Rooms at the Suzhou Hotel in Jiangsu, China. Whit has an MSc in Management from University of Liverpool and over 10 years experience working in luxury hotels in operational departments, including the front office, food and beverage, and HSKP. He has worked at the Ritz-Carlton, the Luxury Collection, and for the JW Marriott Hotel brand, and as I've just said, currently holds the position of Assistant Director of Rooms at the Suzhou Hotel, Jiangsu, China. He is the author of A Decade of Pursuing the Dream and an experienced hospitality educator and trainer, and we're delighted to say that he joins us right now from China. Whit, over to you. Oh, I think we're almost there. Whit, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Whit from China. First of all, I would like to thank you, UKHospitality, for organizing such a great event for the Global Hotelier. And I think it's truly a great honor to be here today to share my thoughts with all of you on how our country managing the pandemic and how hotel in China managed the business during the pandemic period. And so today my topic will be more focusing on how to improve the guest experience during the pandemic in China. So as Jennifer has mentioned, that I'm actually graduate from the University of Liverpool as a master's student, and I have over 10 years of working experience in the luxury hotel operation department. In location wise, I actually have the chance to work in Singapore, in Guangzhou, in Australia as well. So it's really excited to be here today to share our thoughts in how we improve the guest experience during the pandemic. Yeah. So let's begin. So firstly, I would like to talk about how China managed the pandemic. And as we know, that after the outbreak, the Chinese government actually adopted the most comprehensive prevention and major prevention to bring the virus under the control. As according to the China Daily, that Chinese government will adopt the few approach to manage the pandemic. Firstly is the time release of information. Second is dissemination of knowledge about the prevention and control. And third is the public opinion guidance by the guidance and support by the mainstream media. And last but not the least, universal participation and with the social cohesion. And how does it affect the China hospital business? From my personal perspective, when I recall of the pandemic, our hotel is actually locked down, and there's no doubt that the Chinese hospital industry was hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic during the early stage of the pandemic. So this can be seen from different ways. First is about the decrease of hotel occupancy. As according to China's culture and tourism statistic, that the majority of hotel in China, the occupancy was below 10% in February in 2020. Secondly is the decrease of the hotel ADR, as due to the pandemic impacts, the hotel ADR decreased dramatically. Our hotel ADR has dropped like 50% on the year of 2020, And lastly, it also impacts on the revenue for food and beverage, sport, recreation, and other revenues. While with the business downturn, it also affects the employee's salary and welfare during that period of time. So we're actually have some salary reduction during that period of time, but now we're getting better. So everything is back to normal in China for now. And let's continue to the next pages. So it's action for recovery. It's the action for recovery. And during the recovery period, we are actually the government have like 3 aspects in terms of for preparing the recovery. One of the most important components for the recovery plan is the effective support from the government in coordinating the workers from different cities and provinces to return to the workplace. As you know, that during the pandemic we have the travel restriction, so a lot of workers they are not able to come back to their workplace. So Chinese government are actually helping the organization in coordinating the workers from returning back to the workplace. So this is a very good initiative in China for the co-workers to return back to work. And second is about the employee well-being and safety. As you can see from the picture, from the picture, every associate are mandatory for the temperature checking on the daily basis and make sure they stay well in a health condition, as well as to wear masks to when they're serving to the customers. And lastly is most important is about the guest safety and well-being. As you can see from the slide that the room attendant is actually sanitizing the room. So it's actually sanitizing the room, and this initiative is actually mandatory for every employees and every guest rooms to be sanitizing before the guest check-in and after the guest check-out. And the pandemic actually, let's continue to the next pages. The pandemic have changed a lot of things, I mean, for people's life and also hotel business operation as well. And so what I have learned and what we have learned from that pandemic, I would like to talk about from 2 perspectives. And first is from a national perspective. From national perspective, is the Chinese government taking effective action in screening and testing and monitoring the pandemic, with the support from the technology and innovation. As you can see from the slide, there's a green code on the slide. That this is essential for everyone in China to obtain one, to ensure they can go from one place to another place. The purpose of obtaining the green card is to identify if this person has any traveling or living history in the high risk, middle risk, and low risk area, which is critically vital for the effective control and prevention of the pandemic. While this implementation and initiative support by the Chinese people, and they are actually showing 100% understanding and cooperative in such a management implementation. And I think this is the big learning points during the pandemic, and this is how China in hotel industry to get recovery very soon. And from the second perspective is about from the other perspective is about the hotel perspective. As you can see from the slide that I have called that daily engagement phone call. As we understand that during the pandemic period, it's not easy for hotel to acquire business. Therefore, it's very important for us to engage with our guests for business development, especially for those guests who are traveling from particular places or cities that require for a 14-day self-quarantine in the hotel. Therefore, we are taking an initiative to deliver daily engagement phone call with those guests to enhance their overall experience and stay experience during this day. So I think this is one of the initiative we're taking to engage with our guests and also to make them feel warm. I mean, during this day in the hotel, and it's also increased the hotel revenue as well. So looking at the current status, I would like to talk about the firstly, I would like to talk about the destination city hotel business performance. There's two pictures on the slide. The first is from Hainan, is the destination city. It's a destination province in China as well. As you can see from the slide, the people are running the service and the service are running in the restaurant. So which means the diner in the restaurant actually increased as well. And the second picture is from one of the 5-star hotel in Shanghai during the public holiday. As you can see, the people on queue for checking and check out. So this also means the hotel business actually get recovery very soon in China. So according to the culture and tourism studies show that the numbers of domestic tourists in 2020 was 2.2 billion. Down 52.1% year-on-year. Domestic tourism revenue reached 2.2 trillion Chinese yuan, down to 61.6% year-on-year. But in the other hand, the quarterly comprehensive index of tourist economy operation was increased respectively by quarterly. Which can see like in the first quarter of 2020, the index of tourist economy operation was 68.9%, and the third quarter was 78.47%, and the last quarter is 85.3%. So, but it's increased dramatically from the previous quarter. So look at the futures. The current string indicate a strong future, which we can see from the forecasting, which are according to China tourism big data forecasting that the numbers of domestic tourists in 2021 will be 4.1 billion, and the revenue from domestic tourism will be 3.3 trillion Chinese yuan. Up to 42% and 78% respective from previous year. And there's some let's continue to the next pages. There's some key takeaway I'd like to share during the pandemic. The first is the China in conclusion, there's some takeaway I would like to share can be seen as flowing to our audience, which may be helpful to apply to their working places. The first one is that China's hospital industry take effective measure on the pandemic control prevention. And second is the technology innovation positive support the hotel business operation during the pandemic period for the positive growth and results. So this example I would like to share is that during the pandemic period, so a lot of sightseeing spots are actually closed down in China. On the early stage of the pandemic, but in the late stage of the pandemic, the tourist spot slowly to start to open, but the hospital industry are taking effective measure in controlling the traffic to the tourists and attraction sports. So we are using the technology to make an online reservation and before any guest or any visitor to visiting the tourist, to the tourist spot, the sightseeing spot. So this is one of the tech we like to share, that the technology innovation have positive support the hotel business operation and hospital operation during the pandemic. Last but not the least, the China's hospital industry economy showed a positive recovery during even the pandemic has significant impact the hotel business during the early stage of the pandemic. So for example, I would like to share an example is based on our hotel numbers. And last year our hotel occupancy average reached to 70.72% average for the year of 2020. So this is a good trend. We see the hospital industry in China show a positive trend. Yeah, so this is what we like to share with all of you today. And thank you for inviting me to be here to participating with this webinar. It's really appreciating and looking forward to see you in China. Thank you, Jennifer and David.
Oh, thank you so much, Whit. That was fantastic. A really great insight into the Chinese hospitality market as well. So great to see that there's some positive trends happening there. I am going to crack on straight into the question and answer session. As I said before, if you do have anything you want to put into the Q&A, please do chuck it into the chat section of the webinar. All you need to do is drag your mouse across and that will come up. We're going to talk to Cameron, who's in the studio with me as well, and I'll introduce to him very shortly, but I'm aware that Kate, who was with us earlier, the lovely Kate Nicholls, is very tight on time and we're getting close to 2 o'clock, so I'd very quickly like to chat to you, Kate, if that's okay. Just a bit about the vaccination passports, because they're very much in the news, in the press at the moment. How do you think this is working? Do you think it will work? Is it the right way to go forward?
Well, I think it's really too early to be able to tell at the moment, because they are at a very early stage of development and thinking, and the government in the UK is still talking about it in a consultative way. Quite clear that they will be in place whether we choose to have them or not, as a sort of a national scheme. As the Prime Minister said, businesses are going to ask for proof of vaccination. You're already seeing that with Saga and with Carnival Cruises. So customers are going to want to have it. I think the key is it's helpful to see how it can be used to reopen international travel and tourism, get those green corridors reopened, get those green routes restarted. And then also, I think it has a role to play in helping customers feel safe in coming back to mass events. How do you get Scotland, the Calcutta Cup, in Scotland in a massive stadium full next year? COVID certification is one of the ways you can see of doing that. I think where it's much more challenging is where you're talking about it in a domestic environment, popping to the pub, popping to the restaurant, or popping to a hotel. And that's where we need to be careful that they're not introduced a mandatory way, that it is genuinely voluntary, and also critically that it's not linked to the lifting of social distancing restrictions, because otherwise you're putting businesses in a really difficult position, that they're choosing between losing money because of restrictions or having the costs of administering a vaccine certification. So a lot of moral, ethical, legal issues to work through.
Yeah, hopefully we find a way that it works, as you said, because it could be key in building that confidence that you talked about as being so important, obviously, to build over the next year or so. I want to ask, do you think, has there been a long-term positive out of the last year? Do you think we've learned anything that's actually been good, or has it all just been a bit rubbish?
I think the long-term positive out of this year is that it reinforces everything that is brilliant about our industry. We are innovative, dynamic. Our businesses have pivoted to provide all sorts of different services. We've implemented new tech solutions really, really quickly. The second thing is that it's reinforced the fact that we are the most collaborative, supportive industry. People have reached out to other people, nobody left behind. Everybody shared their advice, guidance, support. We've worked together as an industry, and you can't say that about many of the others. And I have worked across others and worked in other sectors. It just doesn't happen in other sectors. And thirdly, we've given back. We've shown our big heart to our communities. The amount of support we've given in setting up support networks for people who've been made redundant, people who've lost their homes, housing the homeless, housing the most vulnerable, helping our NHS heroes, sort of feeding them, all those kind of things. And lots of smaller scale community charitable activities where people have fed older people in their communities, made sure that they're checked out and looked after, provided community support services and shops, that kind of charitable donation, public spiritedness, the big heart of hospitality fully on display. And I do believe that that's one of the reasons why we've had so much goodwill from customers, so much goodwill from politicians, that we've really proved our worth.
Do you think that will be the key element to hopefully the hospitality industry making a good and hopefully quick recovery?
I think so. I think people have had a newfound respect for what we do. Cooking for your family 3 times a day. Boy, do you relish the fact that somebody else has cooked and served it for you. You have a newfound respect, having tried to do it yourself, for the barista who serves you your perfect morning cup of coffee. Yeah. People miss that, and people have missed that everyday socializing, and they know and understand that we're that safe place to do it. So I do think that will be key to bouncing back. And I also think it will be key to helping, if we harness it, helping unlock one of the biggest challenges we've had as a sector, which, HIT very well knows, is about careers and attracting people into our industry, changing the perception of our industry as a dead-end job. We have a huge opportunity now to capitalize on that warmth of goodwill and show people how much of a profession it is, how skilled it is.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a fantastic opportunity. And thank you so much for your time and your insight, Kate. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been brilliant. I'm going to introduce you actually to Cameron here in the studio before we go to any more Q&A with Alicia and Cameron himself, because we're delighted that he's a human being in person in a studio. It's wonderful. So Cameron is one of our sponsors as well. Red Units is part of that, and Cameron is a strategic partner there at Red Unit, which is an Edinburgh-based intercultural design consultancy where he supports the team with their design thinking and delivering client excellence. Alongside the day job, he takes much enjoyment in being a member of HIT Scotland's Futures Group, focusing on providing insight and supporting events for the next generation of hospitality leaders. Prior to stepping into the agency world, though, Cameron worked in the events and hospitality sector, where he gained a fundamental understanding and a passion for driving brand success in the industry. Cameron, thank you so much for joining us. Nice to see a human being in person.
Thanks very much for having me, and thanks to David and the HIT team as well. I think it's a fantastic initiative that they've put together for the reopening.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have these conversations as well, and as Kate said, show that everyone's kind of working together, which is really nice to see. I want to sort of go on to creating sort of a good customer experience in a COVID-safe environment. How do you think the best way that we can all do that across the sector?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think everyone in their independent kind of speeches that they've just done there really summed it up quite well. The industry was maybe quite traditional in the past, has got a fantastic opportunity to kind of innovate and look at new technologies, and clearly, as Alicia pointed out, some businesses are able to do that through apps. Smaller businesses might not quite have that opportunity. So I think in terms of the customer experience, it's got to be one that's welcoming. I think hospitality does that best, but at the same time, we've got to really put health and safety at the forefront of that and make sure people are comfortable in the environment that they're operating in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to talk a wee bit about marketing and making sure people are aware, because we have covered that again in a couple of the presentations about creating those stories, using social media, things like that. What has been and what will continue to be the best form of marketing, and something that is, I suppose, so negative? How do you make it a positive to sell to your customers?
I think we've got a fantastic opportunity in the time that we're in to sort of deliver inspirational content. Alicia touched upon it and how it would work for them, keeping in touch with those customers that do want to come back but aren't quite there yet. I think hospitality has always been good at pivoting. I think it's an opportunity to pivot to digital. It might have been where we traditionally looked at sort of paid media. We can look more towards those angles to get better sort of bang for a buck, if you want to call it that. But really overall, I think it's about delivering kind of inspirational content, making people feel they want to come back. And we know for a fact that those who do continue to communicate with their customers from past recessions, albeit this one's a pandemic induced, that those who pay and spend and give budget during recessions tend to be those that come out quickest. So my overriding message would be, don't calm down, keep your marketing going, and make sure you're delivering that message to your customers.
Yeah, if you possibly can, keep engaging, keep telling your customers you're there and you're excited to get them back, I suppose. That's that key, to be at the forefront of their mind when things open, when things are much more able to move around. That's what you want to be there. You're their first port of call. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's such a competitive kind of place. I think in the UK, we're very lucky. Domestic tourism is a big part. I know Visit Scotland, for example, looking from Scottish perspective, London's a massive market. But yeah, we do really want to make sure that we're at the forefront in delivering that message.
And how do you think we do encourage more international travellers, that Britain, Scotland in particular, is a safe place to come sort of in a COVID environment?
It's the same messaging. I mean, obviously we've heard from Wit today, who's out in China, slightly different landscape there digitally. But it's the same. It's about being there, delivering that messaging. We're lucky, as I said, that we've got that domestic kind of tourism that will hopefully keep the sector going throughout the kind of summer months. But when those other markets, Germany, France, the US, start to reopen, China as well, I think it's about keeping in touch with your partners and all at the same time making sure that your customer experience is still there.
Yeah, absolutely, Cameron. Thank you very much. I do want to bring, we've got a question here in for Wit as well. Again, if you want to get involved in the conversation, we've only got a few minutes left, but please do chuck your questions. I'll try and get them to the speakers if we possibly can. So this one is for you, Wit. What has surprised you most when you have reopened your business and started the journey to recovery? Has there been anything that's really stood out as something you didn't expect to happen, or any positives that you can take from that?
Yes, I would say it's the spirit of teamwork, because during the pandemic, our hotel interns and trainees were required to terminate the internships by the school and colleagues. And when we start to reopen the hotel in the early stage of March in 2020, and the business are recovering dramatically fast, which was unexpected. While the biggest challenge we were encountering was the shortage of manpower. But what surprised me the most is the teamwork spirit. Our associates are dedicating to themselves to work extra hours and to fight hard in what they believe, and to fight hard in delivering exceptional guest experience to our customers. So this is what surprised me the most. Even now, we still have the biggest challenge in manning and the shortage of people. But our associate really work hard to fight what they believe. So I think this is what surprised me and what I have learned during the reopening of the hotel.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you.
No, that's great. That's so good to hear. I'm going to ask you one more question before I want to go to Alicia. What countries, was there anywhere else in the world that you were looking at carefully as sort of the Chinese market to help make your decisions, whether they be sort of a good example, a bad example? Was there anywhere else you were sort of helping to make those decisions? Was there any other countries in the world?
Actually, as according to about me earlier, so I actually taking a note from Alicia's, sharing, and I think Thailand, and from Alicia's, sharing, it provides me with a very good intelligence to make decision for our own property, and as she's saying that to conduct regular departmental and GM meeting. And so the team members can involve in every step and to make a better decision for the business moving forward.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the intelligence I can learn from that, and to really help our associates to involve in the business development, because especially nowadays, the hotel industry in China is actually quite it's under a shortage of manning. So we have to allow and to involve the young generation to involve what they are doing. So this is one of the intelligence I learned from this webinar, apply into our own property. So I would definitely host a monthly like department director meeting with our team, and to have our team member to involve with what is going on.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Moving forward with our business.
Brilliant. Thank you so much,
you.
and thank you for joining us from China today as well. It's been a fantastic insight. I want to move on.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to move on to Alicia finally, and thank you for staying with us. I know we've gone a wee bit over our time today, but I want to ask you sort of the same question, Alicia. Was there any markets, any countries that you were looking at for guidance, or were you sort of, I suppose, at the front of the curve in the opening back up?
Yeah, I think that Thailand was really sort of one of the key leaders in their management of the pandemic. So certainly the way that the governments here handled it from the start and continuing now, you know, we were really inspired by them. And so I'm really proud of what they've been able to achieve and continually communicating to us. You know, sometimes we just get sort of a government announcement at 11 o'clock at night for a new sort of protocol that will take place at 7 a.m. in the morning. And, you know, and it does happen, and we just go with it and it works. So really, I think that Thailand is one of the countries that's really at the forefront.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had to be exceptionally flexible as well on that, which can be challenging, I'm sure. If you could do it all again, though, in terms of the reopening, is there anything you would do differently? Is there anything that people watching today can maybe learn from what you have already done?
I'm really proud of what we've achieved and our strategic plan that we put in place. So I'm sure there's probably things, but really, as I said, hand on heart, I'm really proud. I don't think there would be anything that I could change. One of the things that I have learned and that I would say, and I know I mentioned it in my webinar, is don't underestimate your domestic market and how supportive they will be of you. We have had an overwhelming amount of support from the Thai community. And I think that when the UK fully reopens again, and indeed Edinburgh, I know that the local, you know, Edinburgh and everywhere from the UK will come and support. And you know what, don't be afraid if there is issues and things do happen and things don't go right. What I've noticed is if there's a few hiccups along the way with the new protocols, so on and so forth, the guests understand. And that's something that's really, the travellers have also changed their mindset, which has been really great. And it's that real team effort from the guest and from you as a hotelier. So that would be.
That's great to hear that there's been a positive reaction as opposed to everything you've had to put in place from the people using the hotel.
Absolutely. I mean, there's protocols that you put in place that, for example, just, you know, a minute example is the gymnasium. So you can't operate a gymnasium anymore in a hotel with everybody going at once. And being in a hotel, telling a guest, oh, you know, you can't go in now, you have to book in advance, you have to, you know, which is something we would never usually do in previous years because it was, you know, if a guest wants to go to the gym at a certain time, they can. And sort of we were quite like, oh, we need to make sure of our wording and you need to make sure that they still get that 5-star experience. But guests are just so understanding. Of course, no problem. Let me know what time I can go. You know, or they help plan you help plan and make it more bespoke for them in advance. These are our protocols. This is what we would, you know, like to do and make sure you have a seamless stay. Can we help tailor your stay now so that there's no, you know, disappointment? And it's worked really well for us.
Fantastic.
That's for us.
So glad to hear that. Thank you so much again for joining us from Thailand. It's been a joy to hear you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, that's all we've got time for. As I said, I'm aware I just looked at my hand and I have no watch on, but I am aware that we're past our time. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all our speakers, of course, Alicia, Kate, Whit and Cameron for joining us here in the studio, and to David, as always, for being here with us. Thank you all to our sponsors as well, Skills Development Scotland, Vision Events Glasgow, Red Unit, Recruit Genie and Hilton Hotels. As I said earlier, if you want to support HIT Scotland and you want to help support the Resilience Scholarship Programme as well, everyone who's been adversely affected by the pandemic, you can text HIT SCOT, HITSCOT, to 785, that's 70085, to donate £10 if you wish. But the webinar has been free, they will continue to be free, and the details if you want to make that donation are on the screen now. The only thing that's really left to do is to remind you that we will be back again next Thursday with another webinar. Head to HIT Scotland's website just to sign up. We're talking mainly about the environment next week. We've got Andy Pag and Gordon Dewar as well from Edinburgh Airport and Eco Adventurer, the innovative Eco Adventurer. That promises to be a great hour next week, so please join us if you can. Get signing up now on the HIT Scotland website. But from me, from David, from Cameron, from all of us here in Glasgow at the moment, and from all our speakers, thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.